Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Howard from Chicago sent me an email recently, and one of those things that I find quite interesting, because how I've been saying for the longest time that Joe Biden has been the most pro-worker president of my lifetime, and Howard wanted to make an argument for Donald Trump, and I guess this is one of those moments where you go, if something affects your life and your life's been made better, maybe this is it. And he pointed out that Donald Trump was the guy who got the raise in the overtime threshold. If you remember, overtime 23.6 is what it was before they could exempt you from overtime, which meant you could work 100 hours a week for 23.6 a year, as long as they gave you a nice little title. Well, Donald Trump got it raised up to $35,000, and for this, Howard was eternally grateful. But Howard didn't quite understand that what Trump had done was cut his raise in half, because Obama actually wanted to raise it to $47,000. And this is, again, another one of those weird moments where facts matter and what you understand matters as well. And again, we went through a whole process of why I thought Donald Trump was the worst president for working people. And the big part of it was the Janus decision. He's the guy who appointed Neil Gorsuch, who finally made the decision to make the entire country a no rights at work country for public sector workers. And here to share some thoughts on that decision and maybe make the argument of why Joe Biden could be the greatest president for working people ever. I've asked Sheldon Whitehouse to come talk with us. Sheldon Whitehouse is the senator from the great state of Rhode Island. Senator, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be with you, Rick. I appreciate you having me on.
So I'm looking at this conversation I have with Howard, and Howard is he's very into it. I got a raise, and it was Donald Trump who got something for me, and that's all he saw. And I think that happens with a lot of people.
Yeah, well, a lot of what gets done to working people is done behind the scenes and done through undemocratic means. And that's really our topic today with the Supreme Court, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Now, the argument that I made to him, and look, the Janus decision was not the first assault by the Supreme Court. I've said for the longest time, our Supreme Court is not a conservative court, it's a corporate court. The moneyed interests seem to always get what they want, and silencing the voice of workers has always been high on their list. And this Janus decision, which very few people heard of at the time, and still very few people have heard of, is one of the centerpieces of the assault on organized labor and working class people in this country. Now, you were at the center of this. You actually were part of filing an amicus brief against it. Walk us through what, from your perspective, what the case was about, and ultimately what you think it accomplished or didn't accomplish.
So there are four cases you need to keep in mind, because this is not just a case, it's a little story, it's a saga. The first case is called Abood. The second case is called Knox. The third case is called Friedrichs. And the grand finale was Janus. What Abood did is it said that if you're a public union and you are representing a group that's larger than your membership, the non-members have to kick in a contribution for the benefits that you negotiate for them. Fair deal. The court had supported it for a long time. Even Justice Scalia had agreed with it. That was the state of the law. Then comes Justice Alito. And in the second case, Knox, he sends up a little flare saying, I really don't like this Abood rule very much. Somebody ought to think about challenging that to us, which was a signal that the right wing instantly responded to in Friedrichs. So they brought a case, they rushed it to the Supreme Court. Literally, Rick, they went into the district court and the appellate court and said, please rule against me quick as you can. I'm here to lose. I've been a lawyer a long time. I've never heard of lawyers coming into a court and saying, hey, I'm here to lose. But they knew they had a friendly ear at the Supreme Court. They were trying to get there as quickly as they possibly could. They rushed the case up there, and then boom, wouldn't you know it, Justice Scalia died before the decision could come out. So they didn't have a 5-4 majority any longer. 4-4 tied, went to the runner. The decision had gone the other way in the Ninth Circuit. So all their plans blew up. Then comes Gorsuch, as you mentioned. As soon as he's on the court, back they come again. Same high speed, we want to lose as quickly as possible litigation strategy, same plaintiff of convenience. Indeed, they filed the case before Mr. Janus actually became a plaintiff. So they're clearly just using the plaintiffs like little chess pieces to move the case to the court. They get up to the court, and of course, they got what they had hoped for in Friedrichs, bingo, a 5-4 decision, taking a shot at public employee unions by no longer allowing them to be compensated for the work they do, essentially requiring them to work for free for the non-union members. And across that saga, you saw a constant flow of dark money front groups, very often with a common funder behind them, so that what you saw in the courtroom was just the tip of the iceberg, and most of the action was going on out of sight.
No, you're absolutely right. I still remember the clip of Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, and the construction billionaire Diane Hendricks, and her asking, in the most frenzied of way, when do we get right to work? When do we get to pass this assault on labor? Now, that was in the private sector. This, in the public sector, took states' rights away, took all that away, and overdid, as you said, in the Abood decision, 40 plus years of decided law. And I hearken back to John Roberts, saying, hey, we're going to call balls and strikes. I believe in decided law, stare decisis, all this stuff. And out of whole cloth, they dreamt up a whole new decision.
Yeah, they've got an interesting view of precedent on the right wing of the court, which is that they're all for precedent, and the importance of precedent while they're having to be confirmed and having to go through the rituals of the confirmation process. But once they get on the court, the respect for precedent, including this 40-year-old precedent upon which states, municipalities, counties had relied, had built their labor contracts, it had really been embedded. They blew all that up, really at the behest of a right-wing group called the Bradley Foundation.
And really, it comes back to the Olin foundations, the Bradley foundations, the Koch brothers' money, all of this billionaire money, and it's amazing how we give tax cuts and created the largest billionaire class in history. And we're told they're smart, they know what to do with the money, Senator, and they do. They assault working people, they move jobs overseas, and they enrich themselves at the expense of the people who actually created the wealth in this country and built it. And now we're in this moment where now there's this great resignation going on, and people are going, hey, we're not putting up with this anymore. We're not taking these crappy jobs. And now we've got them going to the courts and literally wanting the courts to not allow people to quit jobs because it would be injurious to their businesses, which is just incredible to me.
Yeah, the maneuvering behind the scenes is the thing that is quite remarkable. If you go back to Friedrichs and Janus, those cases that were rushed to the court, the lawyers who went into the court saying, please, can I lose, and quickly, they were right-wing special interest groups. And the one that was the lawyer for Mrs. Friedrichs came back in the Janus case as a friend of the court to argue the same point. And the ones that represented Mr. Janus had been friends of the court in Friedrichs. They just switched hats. And if you look at the case, there were, I want to say, 14 amicus groups that all came in, that were all funded by the Bradley Foundation, that never disclosed their common funding, and pretended to the court that this was this sort of manifestation of broad and multiple support, when in fact it's all tentacles of the same big squid, which is the Bradley Foundation.
But isn't that the entire right-wing framework? And this is where the right does this much better than the left does. The right has built an incredible infrastructure. Their state policy network of think tanks all across the country, the incestuous pool of information that they create and then regurgitate through their media. They have really built an echo chamber second to none. And again, it comes back to it's this billionaire money that has created this environment of misinformation and, well, distortion and lies. Let's just call it what it is. That's got people like Howard who are thrilled that they got a little bit of a raise instead of what they should have gotten and what they should have been entitled to. And poor Howard, he's grateful for the crumb he got.
Yeah. Yeah. And the deliberateness of it is really plain. There was a memo out of the Bradley Foundation that was leaked talking about their funding of these briefs. And they said it is very important to orchestrate high caliber amicus efforts, plural, that showcase respected high profile parties who are represented by the very best lawyers with strong ties to the court. And they confessed that Bradley had what they called previous philanthropic investments in the actual underlying legal actions. So they're on all sides of this, manipulating these front groups into positions. And I'll confess to you, Rick, that I think one of our worst failing as Democrats has been that we've done a terrible job at showing the public what's really going on here. It looks like there are 14 legit interest groups coming in, filing amicus briefs. Nobody really gets the joke that it's the Bradley Foundation and the right-wing billionaires around it that are pulling the strings for the whole damn operation.
Yeah, we used to have Lisa Graves on from the Center for Media and Democracy all the time talking about this because it's that pool of money. It's that billionaire money that allows all of this other stuff. It's all of it. It's the assault on workers. It's the assault on women. It's the assault on inequality. It's the assault on, well, the 20th century, as I've been saying. They want to take us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah, I did a appendix, a graph in one of my Supreme Court briefs that showed all the common funding of the front group briefs taking the other side. And Center for Media and Democracy took a look at that and said, bet you we can do better. And they did. They did an even deeper dive into who was funding all of these different groups. So I'm a big fan of Center for Media and Democracy. They do a great job. We as Democrats don't do a great job of letting everybody know what their work is showing us.
No, you're so spot on. And this is why, with all the stuff that's going on around the January 6th committee and all of the information about what we're finding out about January 6th, I, from the beginning, have said, I don't care about the guy who defecated on the floor. We'll hold him accountable. The guy who urinated on the desk, we'll get them. What I want is the moneyed interest who funded all of this. I want the people who paid for the buses. I want the people who put these groups together, who filled these people's minds with disinformation and lies, to enrage them to the point to where they were willing to kill police officers in our capital. Those are the people we really need to go after.
Yes. Some call that aiding and abetting. Some call it being a co-conspirator. Some call it being an accessory before or after the fact. There are a lot of legal doctrines that I very much hope the Department of Justice is pursuing to look beyond just the people who showed up at the Capitol that day and look at the people who were basically the kingpins, the funders, the organizers, and the orchestrators.
Absolutely. And again, I come back to I want those people held responsible and exposed on all of these fronts. And this is why I brought Howard up in this whole thing, because Howard, he feels grateful for the little bit he got. He doesn't realize how these billionaires who have been telling him for all these years, you don't need those stinking unions. You're your own boss. You're an individual. You're all this stuff. And how his life has gotten worse and worse over the years. And his work has gotten harder and longer. And I keep coming back to this moment. He was grateful to Trump for that little bit of an increase. And this is where I reach out to my Democrats and I go, reality, Senator, we got to make people's lives better. We need legislation to move that's going to help families. It's going to make for opportunities for our children, because that's what people need more than the rhetoric that they're being fed in the outrage candy that they're being fed on the right.
Yeah, once you saw Citizens United allow unlimited money come into politics, and once the unlimited money figured out how it could hide its identity, so that you see a phony baloney ad on your screen from, Americans for Peace and Puppies and Prosperity, and you look it up and it's the front group with a, mail drop. But they've somehow got the money to run an ad on your TV about politics. Once that all happened, then you began to see Congress statistically in ways that academics could look at and quantify and write peer-reviewed studies about, stop representing the American public at large and start delivering for big special interests. And the people have noticed.
Yeah. And this is why I come back to your institution.
It makes them mad.
This is why I come back to your institution. The Senate seems to be the place where all progress for working people goes to die. And I'm looking at the Voting Rights Act right now. I'm looking at Build Back Better right now, and all the things that could do to help make people's lives better. This is what's important. Got to get something done. There have got to be things that people see as, hey, this made my life better. All of my rhetoric about Biden being the best pro-union president, the best pro-worker president, doesn't matter if people don't feel it in their paychecks.
Yeah, indeed. And there's no real reason to feel it right now because Congress has been contorted by all of this dark money, special interest spending, and we've got to break the back of it. And I'm hoping very much that now that the Build Back Better is going to have to be rebooted in some fashion, and now that we've had this, I think, terrible self-inflicted defeat with the Voting Rights Act, I'm really hoping that the Biden administration will now focus on what is behind all of this. They don't talk much about dark money. I think the president has only used the phrase one time in his entire presidency. But if you want to get the American people rallying around you and you can point out what's really going on, who was that radio personality who used to say the end of the story?
And now the Paul
and
Harvey. And now the rest of the story.
Exactly. People want to hear the rest of the story, the thing that twists it, that clarifies it, that sort of brings the new reality to it. And I hope that Joe Biden becomes the voice against dark money and for the working people who the dark money enterprise is out to screw.
No, it is something that sorely needs to be done. Senator, I appreciate you taking some time. I hope you'll come back and as this continues and keep us up to date on what you're doing and how we can help, because more importantly than anything, we've got to get active. We've got to get involved. Appreciate the time, Senator.
And we need to call out the court that dark money built.
There you go. Great stuff. Thanks so much, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. If you got thoughts, you got questions, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.